Hey, yo, I want to talk about Sid Meier's seminal work Alpha Centauri in a seemingly ongoing effort to kill my channel by not talking about Final Fantasy, but instead incredibly niche subjects that actually interest me and allow me to retain some of the joy that Magic sparks within me. What do you think the Venn diagram of people who play Magic, people who watch me, and people who have ever even heard of this game looks like? Disclaimer, this isn't real, this set is just a fun fan concept. Sid Meier's Alpha Centauri is a 4X video game considered a spiritual sequel to the Civilization series. Set in a science fiction depiction of the 22nd century, the game begins as 7 competing ideological factions land on the planet Chiron, planet in the Alpha Centauri system. As the game progresses, planet's growing sentience becomes a formidable obstacle to the human colonists, says Wikipedia. But if you want to hear my brief thoughts on it, it's a crusty mess from 1999, a test of your willingness to endure a user interface from before UIs had been standardized. A bit like playing an early 3D game before developers realized that thumbsticks could be used for camera controls and everyone was still just trying stuff to see what stuck. It's an exercise in trial and error restarting because the game is so complex, has so many mechanics and hits you so hard that you will watch hours of progress get wiped out after making a single mistake which spirals into, well, also it looks like this. Look at it. But most importantly, it is the best video game you have never played. Wikipedia is right in that the gameplay focuses on the conflicts between 7 factions, but unlike other 4X games such as Civilization, Stellaris, or Endless Legend, Alpha Centauri's factions aren't made up of race, nationality, history, or culture, but instead ideology. See, in the distant sci-fi future of 2060, a small group of colonists leave the ravages of Earth for a distant planet orbiting Alpha Centauri's primary star. But along the way, their ship, the United Nations Starship Unity, suffers a reactor malfunction and the captain is assassinated, which results in a crisis among the ship's 7 most powerful leaders. The crew then splits into 7 distinct factions under those leaders and are united by that leader's vision for the new world. And thanks to a technology known as the longevity vaccine, those leaders will live for potentially thousands of years, long enough to ensure their vision for that new world will come to pass, perhaps by any means necessary. And that is what makes Alpha Centauri unique. The interactive options with these factions available to the player, built upon ideological differences but flavoured with the distinct personality of that faction's leader, results in a 4X experience where an act of war or diplomatic manoeuvre against you isn't just a frustrating setback from a gameplay perspective, but might feel personal as you've grown to know these rival faction leaders, each with their own distinct quirks and behaviours. So you know that when they call you out or move against you, it isn't just because you have a resource they want or because they have a strategic incentive, but because they fundamentally disagree with your principles. They know what you stand for, and they don't like it. Alpha Centauri is a 4X that manages to not only tell a satisfying narrative story, not only make you feel like a key player within that story, but also by asking you to consider and represent your own theological, ecological, economical, political leanings, makes the game feel deeply personal as your own perspectives are explored, rebutted, questioned, and challenged. Often the game will demonstrate how an ideal that you hold to be universally good and true could be warped when viewed from a different philosophical perspective. Do you believe that humanity would be better off if everybody recycled? Well, let's see what that looks like when the human hive do it. It is every citizen's final duty to go into the tanks and become one with all of the people. Still approve of recycling now? Are you in favour of free universal childcare facilities? Well, let's see how the Spartan Federation view them. Men and women work harder knowing their children are safe and close at hand. And never forget that with children present, parents will defend their homes to the death. Excellent strategic military use of children there. How about advancements in medical research? Well, here's a quote from Morgan Industries. Some civilian workers got in among the research patients today and became so hysterical I felt compelled to have them nerve stapled. The consequence, of course, will be another public relations nightmare, but I was so severely shaken by the extent of their revulsion towards a project that's so vital to our survival. Do the ends justify the means apparently terrible enough to drive you to hysteria? Thinking about it is kind of the point of the game. Now, you can create your own faction, but I honestly don't think you'll need to, as the 7 of them from the original game feel to me like they've covered every base. And even then, 7 more were added in the Alien Crossfire expansion in case those first 7 weren't enough. Though I'll admit most of these ones aren't as iconic, and some of them do kind of feel like retreads. Apart from Svensgard, of course, that handsome pirate bastard. The game is available cheap enough on Steam and often goes on sale further, but on GOG it's part of their preservation program, which means it should have a better chance of running on newer systems. and to my understanding the GOG version also includes some mods which make the game playable in widescreen and at different resolutions. I tell you this not because I want you to buy the game, but because I want you to buy the game and then never stop talking about it. I want you to make and then wear an Alpha Centauri t-shirt every day for the rest of your life. I want you to write the words Alpha Centauri should get a remaster which updates the UI and faction player count and literally nothing else into your wedding vows. I want everyone you know to say to you, God, are you still talking about that old video game? And for you to respond, it's called Sid Meier's Alpha Centauri, a Brian Reynolds design, and yes, until it gets a proper sequel, I will never stop. And if anyone says to you that Sid Meier's Beyond Earth is basically a sequel to Alpha Centauri, I want you to send them to that GOG page and start this cycle anew, because if they think that, then they've clearly never played it. Magic the Gathering is a game of 5 colours. A set's theme and mechanics are often broken into pairings of how these colours interact. The setting of Ravnica, for instance, is defined by its guilds, which are each representative of one of the game's 10 2-colour pairs. Alpha Centauri has 14 playable factions and 1 non-playable faction in the form of the planet itself. That's enough to represent each of the 10 2-colour pairs and each of the 5 mono-colours too. So I thought it would be fun to mash these ideas together and imagine what a crossover set might look like. We'll start with the mono-colours because while they need to be representative of a unique faction in their own right, the cards with those colours will also need to pull double duty and intuitively fit into each other 2-colour combination faction that is comprised of that colour. To achieve this, we're going to make the mono-coloured factions broad, and we'll start with green as I think it's the easiest to explain as a good example of what I mean. You are orphans, Earth Deirdre, your homeworld already buried so young among the aeons, yet now you fill the skies where we watched a million sunsets with flame and contrails, paying no heed to the hard lessons the universe has tried to teach you. Are you a breath of life to invigorate a complacent world, you Earth humans? Or an insidious cancer which must be exorcised? Lady Deirdre Sky, Conversations with Planet. Green is represented by the Voice of Planet. These cards consist of everything natural to the environment, from weather patterns and geological movements, to native life forms such as fungus and mindworms. All things that are a primary concern of other 2-colour factions that also use green, but if looked at exclusively and without the reliance on the other colours, still make for a pretty distinct faction in their own right. Green reflects an ideological interest in ecological well-being, and so the cards consist of big creatures and growth effects. In all, meaning this monocolour is representative of planet itself. The substructure of the universe regresses infinitely towards smaller and smaller components. Behind atoms we find electrons, and behind electrons, quarks. Each layer unravelled reveals new secrets, but also new mysteries. Academician Procazar Harif, for I have tasted the fruit. Blue is represented by the University of Planet, a technocratic faction that chooses the pursuit of knowledge and scientific advancement over such pesky things like ethics and often diplomatic relations. Blue in this set is all about conducting all manner of potentially immoral but unfettered research and experimentation for the sake of learning itself. And so the cards consist of mechanics that will draw you more cards and gain you additional benefits whenever you do. Any other 2-colour faction that also uses blue will benefit from these mechanics, but when looked at on its own, blue is representative of the brilliant yet reckless ideals of Zakharov of the university. Resources exist to be consumed, and consumed they will be, if not by this generation, then by some future. By what right does this forgotten future seek to deny us our birthright? None, I say, let us take what is ours, chew and eat our fill. CEO Nwabudike Morgan, The Ethics of Greed. Black is represented by the Morganites of Morgan Industries, a corporate capitalistic faction all about wealth, consumerism and luxury for those that can afford it. Black in this set is all about achieving total monopolistic control of all of planet's resources and grabbing every drop of planet's wealth for yourself. And so the cards consist of mechanics that will let you gain life and treasure tokens at your opponent's expense. Again, any other 2-colour faction that also uses black will benefit from this approach, but when looked at on its own, black is representative of the shrewd and monopolistic ideals of Morgan Industries. Information, the first principle of warfare, must form the foundation of all of your efforts. Know of course thine enemy, but in knowing him do not forget above all to know thyself. The commander who embraces this totality of battle shall win even with the inferior force. Colonel Corazon Santiago, Spartan Battle Manual. Red is represented by the Spartans of the Spartan Federation, a militaristic survivalist faction all about strength, discipline and the right to bear arms. Red in this set is all about maintaining combat readiness and training in the event of conflict, and stockpiling weaponry as a means of deterrence. And so the cards consist of mechanics that provide plenty of combat tricks and creatures with abilities like haste and first strike that give them an edge in battle. Once again, any other 2-colour faction that also uses red will benefit from these abilities, But when looked at on its own, red is representative of the vigilant but perhaps paranoid Santiago of the Spartan Federation. As the Americans learned so painfully in Earth's final century, free flow of information is the only safeguard against tyranny. The once chained people whose leaders at last lose their grip on information flow will soon burst with freedom and vitality. But the free nation gradually constricting its grip on public discourse has begun its rapid slide into despotism. Beware of he who would deny you access to information, for in his heart he dreams himself your master. Commissioner Provin Lau, UN Declaration of Rights. White is represented by the Peacekeepers of the Peacekeeping Forces, a faction trying to maintain what they claim to be the spirit of the original colonization mission by re-establishing and reinforcing the United Nations Charter. White in this set is all about defending the principles of that charter by maintaining order while conveniently establishing yourself as the only legitimate authority on planet. And so the cards consist of mechanics that will set rules for gameplay, such as how and when spells can be drawn or cast, or what kind of creatures can be played. Finally, any other two-colour faction that also uses white will benefit from these mechanics, but when looked at on its own, white is representative of the humane but self-righteous Lao of the peacekeeping forces. Now we're on to the two colour combinations, and these factions will largely be represented on cards that require both colours to be cast, but would be mostly made up of certain selections from those monocolour cards previously mentioned, ones with mechanics that would reinforce each faction's theme and gameplay style. For instance, I shall not confront planet as an enemy, but shall accept its mysteries as gifts to be cherished. Nor shall I seek to crudely peel away the layers like the skin from an onion. Instead I shall gather them together as the trees gather the breeze. The wind shall blow and I shall bend. The sky shall open and I shall drink my fill. Lady Deirdre Sky, Gaian Acolyte's Prayer. Blue-green is represented by the Gaians of Gaia's Stepdaughters, a politically green faction that seeks to understand planet and attain an ecological harmony with it. Blue-green in this set is all about guarding, understanding and preserving planet's native life, and so this combination takes the themes of gaining knowledge from blue and the connection to planet's ecology from green, and introduces cards with mechanics that allow you to gain benefits from the number of creatures you control. So in this set, blue-green is representative of the sensitive and eco-friendly ideals of Deirdre of the Gaian Stepdaughters. To understand a thing is to know the manner by which it might be destroyed. A fundamental understanding of the basic building blocks of the universe is essential, then to the total destruction of everything. Foreman DeMai, One Tool, One Thought. White-black is represented by the Drones of the Free Drones, an industrial socialist faction that engages not just with the leaders of the other factions, but also the little guys. And if the working class of those other factions ever revolt and overthrow their masters, the Free Drones will be more than happy to welcome them and that new base into the collective. White-black in this set is all about freeing the enslaved working classes from the repressors while gaining control of all industrial production on planet. And so this combination takes the themes of imposing your way of doing things on other factions from white, and then the idea of taking from them what you feel is rightfully yours from black, and introduces cards with mechanics that prevent your creatures from dying but punishes your opponent whenever one of their creatures die. So in this set, white-black is representative of the stalwart if self-important ideals of DeMai of the Free Drones. Those who join us need only give up half of their humanity, the illogical, ill-tempered and disordered half, commonly thought of as right brain functioning. In exchange, the left brain capacities are increased to undreamed potentials. The tendency of biologicals to cling instead to their individual personalities can only be attributed to archaic evolutionary tendencies. Prime function, Aki Zeta 5, convergence. White-blue is represented by the Cybernetic Consciousness, a faction of, you guessed it, cyborgs that feel humanity's inevitable next step is to leave behind emotion and embrace the cold logical truth of the machine. White-blue in this set is all about imposing rationality and order on the inhabitants of what it considers a chaotic planet. And so this combination takes the themes of imposing rules from white, with the scientific research from blue, and introduces cards with mechanics that gain you a benefit equal to the number of artifacts you control. So in this set, white-blue is representative of the rational, if inflexible, ideals of Aki Zeta 5 from the Cybernetic Consciousness. Tau Ceti flowering, horrors visited upon neighbouring systems must never be repeated. Therefore, if it means the end of our evolution as a species, so be it. Caretaker Lula Hamini, sacrifice, life. Red-blue is represented by the Manifold Caretakers, a non-human faction. And risk of flowering, considerable, but rewards of godhood, who can measure? Usurper Jadar Mar, courage to question. Black-green is represented by the Manifold Usurpers, another non-human faction, and like anyone who's ever played Alpha Centauri, I don't really get what these guys are all about, so choose not to play with them. And I'm going to recreate that experience for you here by forgetting they exist and moving on. What's more important, the data or the jazz? Sure, information should be free and all that, but anyone can set information free. The jazz is in how you do it, what you do to it, and in almost getting caught without getting caught. The data is ones and zeros, life is the jazz. Data Jack Cinderose, Infobop. Blue-black is represented by the Angels from the Data Angels, a hacker collective made of espionage experts who are in it as much for the thrill of the game as they are the idea that information shouldn't be kept restricted. Blue-black in this set is all about keeping information free for all, opening the floodgates barring access to data, and maybe even a little engaging in a little virtual debauchery. And so this combination takes the themes of learning new information from blue, and having learned it by infiltrating your opponent from black, and introduces cards with mechanics that mill players but also lets you cast spells from their graveyards. So in this set, blue-black is represented by the stylish free-thinking ideals of Rose of the Data Angels. Mankind has been blind for thousands of years for all of its history. We have come to a place whose wonders are 100-fold more amazing than anything on Earth. Around us is clear evidence of the will of a higher power. I bring the vision to the blind eyes of men. I bring the word to the deaf ears of men. I will make them see it. I will make them hear it. Prophet Char Dawn, Planet Rising. White-green is represented by the Cult of Planet, a religious faction that believes a child who was found amongst the fungus after their colony pod made planetfall is the incarnation of the planet's will itself. This does beg the question, if the cult wasn't formed till after planetfall, why did this faction splinter off on their own when the Starship Unity was initially sabotaged? To which I'm sure there's an answer, but I don't know what it is. However, this faction actually starts on a later turn than all the others to reflect the fact the kid isn't born yet, and I think that's neat enough an idea to win me over to it. White-green in this set is all about carrying out and implementing what it sees as the will of planet, and so this combination takes the themes of imposing your philosophy on your opponents from white, and the connection to planet from green, and introduces cards with mechanics that have group hug style effects which will benefit your opponents, for as long as they're playing the way that you tell them to. So in this set, white-green is representative of the charismatic and unyielding ideals of Char Dawn of the Cult of Planet. Learn to overcome the crass demands of flesh and bone, for they warp the matrix through which we perceive the world. Extend your awareness outwards beyond the self of body to embrace the self of group and the self of humanity. The goals of the group and the greater race are transcendent, and to embrace them is to achieve enlightenment. Chairman Shangjiang, Essays on Mind and Matter. Black-red is represented by the Hive from the Human Hive, a very interesting totalitarian faction that presents as being of one mind, and one mind that promotes the value of mastering self-control to reach some form of higher enlightenment. However, it's heavily implied that one mind is not of the collective, but instead of its ruler, and all those who follow must submit, obey and conform, or face punishment. Black-red in this set is all about founding a society on the principles of security and proper control of its followers, while some claim also preaching brutal nihilism. And so this combination takes the themes of ensuring one's own benefit at the expense of others from black, with the eagerness to employ militaristic force from red, and introduces cards with mechanics that have an aristocrat style of play where you sacrifice your own creatures for what you've decided is the greater good. So in this set, black-red is representative of the ruthless and unquestioning ideals of Yang of the Human Hive. The sea. Vast, mysterious, and full of wealth. And the nations of planet send their trade across it without a thought. Well, the sea doesn't care about them, so it lets them pass. But we can give the sea a little hand in teaching the landlubbers a lesson in humility. Captain Ulrich Svensgaard, the Ripple and the Wave. Red-green is represented by the Pirates of the Nautilus Pirates, an anarchic piratical faction of seafaring buccaneers. Red-green in this set is all about exploiting the riches of the sea and harnessing the vast potential of planet's oceans, and maybe just a bit of piracy. And so this combination takes the themes of combat aggression from red, and while I know instinctively Master of the Sea feels like it should be in blue, in this set the oceans are just a natural part of planet, and so those cards are actually better represented by green. And it introduces cards with mechanics that have defensive effects to represent their understanding of the waves, but plundering chaotic effect of stealing cards from your opponent's hand or the top of their libraries and casting them for free to represent piracy. So in this set, red-green is representative of the intrepid yet barbarous ideals of Svensgaard of the Nautilus Pirates. The righteous need not cower before the drumbeat of human progress. Though the song of yesterday fades into the challenge of tomorrow, God still watches and judges us. Evil lurks in the data links as it lurked in the streets of yesteryear. but it was never the streets that were evil. Sister Miriam Godwinson, The Blessed Struggle. And finally we reach Red White, which is of course represented by one of my favourites, the Believers of the Lord's Believers. And I'm not going to say any more about this one because if you play the game you'll find out for yourself that this one was self-evident. Screw you Miriam, see you in hell. And that's my idea for an Alpha Centauri based Magic the Gathering set. What are your thoughts? What faction would you play? How do you think I did in concept? Have you ever played this game? Do you think you're likely to now? Have you ever even heard of it? I promise it's very good, probably number 2 on my top 5 best games of all time. If you're interested, number 5 is Dragon Age Origins. Not sure if it holds up, but it was my favourite action RPG for many years. Number 4 is Morrowind for a straight up RPG experience. The sequels haven't come as close to greatness as Morrowind did since. Number 3 is Outer Wilds. Look up nothing about this game and just go play it. It's phenomenal, especially if you really like slow burn puzzles. Number 2 is Alpha Centauri, as I'm sure you've gathered. And the only reason it isn't number 1 is because that game has to go to RimWorld. It's weird because I wouldn't recommend RimWorld as passionately as I would the last 2 on this list. I think I only really like this game. But then I look at my playtime, and yeah, I guess it's earned that number 1 spot. Thank you very much for watching this video, and thank you to everyone that supports me, like 27 publications, Eggboy the Particle that permeates all existence, Blank Space, Wanpako Jozu, Miss Murder, a random Patreon, and the rest of my patrons whose names are on screen now. I'd also like to thank the sponsor for this video, me and my Patreon page where you can get your name credited on screen too. Check it out in the link in the description below. Hit the like button, leave a comment, install an ad block, and most importantly subscribe and share this video with a friend. Hit the notification bell and do all those things the algorithm loves. If you agree or disagree with any of my points, or if you want to see me do a video on another subject, let me know and I will see you next time. Can't believe I've done this long a video on Alpha Centauri, this will get no views. Yeah, this really was a video for me.